Not the original size of it. A lot of it has been crumbling away over the years. Limestone tends to do that. It was named Skull Cave because a young British merchant, or I think explorer would be a better term for him. He actually was fleeing from some Ojibwe Native Americans, and he came here to the island, and it was pitch black when he got here, so he slept in the cave, and then when he woke up he was prodded by what he thought were rocks and sticks, but when he woke up to the morning light, he discovered to his horror that he had been sleeping on skulls and bones. So if you take those stairs over there that we're about to pass, they take you up to the highest point on the island. Also up there is a structure called Fort Holmes. It's not a fort like Fort Mackinac, it's just a fancy wooden box that people stand on. It was built by the British in the year 1814 so they could look out for ships trying to sneak onto the island. It's got 3 access points, that's one of them. There's also a hiking path that you can take behind Skull Cave, and there's also a paved road behind the Protestant cemetery that you can ride your bike up. It's not easy, but you can do it. And home. All right, down there at the bottom of that valley is Fort Mackinac. Originally, that was Fort Michilimackinac. Originally, it was Fort Michilimackinac. There's a replica there in its place now in Mackinac City. What happened, though, is the British took the original, they took it apart in pieces, and moved it over here on the frozen ice bridge because we were at war with them in the American Revolution, and they wanted a more secure location. But the ironic thing is, after the American Revolution, we ended up getting the island and Fort Mackinac as part of the package deal through Jay's Treaty. The local British, the ones still in control of Canada, were not happy about this at all because, well, they were going to lose out on millions of dollars from the fur trade. That would lead to our involvement in the War of 1812, and I'll be talking about that in just a little while. All right, so when trees fall here, they don't cut them up for firewood. They don't clear out the paths. They just let them naturally deteriorate into the ground. That way it adds more nutrients to the topsoil. All right, so when the War of 1812 was declared, the British saw their chance to get this island back. Captain Charles Roberts of the British assembled a force of 500 warriors. They were made up of British militia, Canadian voyageurs, and the British Native American allies. They set sail to the opposite end of the island from the fort to a spot that we now call British Landing, appropriately enough. They snuck through the forest in the middle of the night, put together a cannon, pointed it at Fort Mackinac, and kaboom! Fired a warning shot right over the top, alarming and shocking the commander, Lieutenant Porter Hanks. Guys, you have to understand this is before the days of radio, television, and the internet. Lieutenant Porter Hanks had no idea that the War of 1812 had even been declared. And on top of that, he only had like 53 men underneath his command, as opposed to Captain Charles Roberts, who had 500 warriors. Then Captain Roberts delivered his ultimatum. He said, listen, you're outgunned and you're outmanned, but if you surrender this island to me right now, I won't take any captives or prisoners. You'll be free to go. While Lieutenant Porter Hanks knew that he had been beat, he wasn't only worried about the lives of his own men, but the lives of the innocent civilians living outside the walls of the fort as well, from the wrath of the British Native American allies. So the British won this island back in the War of 1812 by firing only one single warning shot. Well, as the war raged on, we tried 3 failed military attempts to get this island back. They tried a naval blockade to prevent food from coming in. They tried to bomb us with they tried to bomb the British with cannon fire, but the balls didn't have the range and they fell harmlessly to the beach grounds. Finally, the most prolific was the battle for Mackinac Island. We tried to do exactly what the British had done to us and sneak in from the opposite end of the island. But the British were ready for that. They built a watchtower that they called Fort George right back at that very elevation that I just pointed out to you. While they saw the Americans coming by the water, they were ready for us as we attempted to storm the island, and then they defeated us in combat. Then, in a last-ditch attempt, Major Andrew Hunter Holmes put together a battalion of men and tried to outflank the British from the side. But the British had put their Native American allies up in the trees. They swooped out of the trees, killed Major Holmes and a handful of his men. Well, to make a long story a lot shorter, we got the island back with a piece of paper. This time it's known as the Treaty of Ghent. Well, we resurveyed the island. We saw Fort George up there. We couldn't call it Fort George because that was the name of the British king. So we renamed it Fort Holmes after the brave young major that died in battle that day. So right now I'm going down a steep hill, so I'm using my brakes again. What I try to do is use just enough brake so they don't feel the weight of the carriage behind them, and they can walk effortlessly down the hill like they normally would. That's what I shoot for anyway. It doesn't always achieve it. Stop doing that. To actually drive the horses isn't terribly difficult. I would say it takes a lot longer to get the hang of doing the brakes. I feel like it took me a good month before I was efficient at it. Alright, so up here to my right is the British rock quarry. The British set fire to this area for about a week until the rock got molten hot. Then they poured water over the molten hot rocks, and that shattered it into thousands of pieces, and that's where they got the rocks and the stones to build a wall around this fort that you're going to see at the end of this tour. So this is the British rock quarry right here to my right, this big divot in the ground.